Hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Perry. It is episode 111. We're going to get Perry on the line in just a second. So tonight we're going to be discussing the wonderful Republican wins in Florida in the 1st and 6th district. Two Republican candidates blew out their Democrat opponents. We're going to chime in a little bit on what's happening in Wisconsin. We're going to talk about the firing of Dr. Peter Marks from the HHS. We're also going to talk about Elise Stefanik withdrawing from her nomination to be the ambassador to the UN. We're going to talk about Ivy League protesters and how those colleges are cracking down on the once protected students. And also, if we have time, we're going to get into a couple other things, including Disney and how they're doubling down on failing DEI. All right, let's see if we can't get Perry on the line.
Hello.
I hear ducks, so that must be my friend Perry from Florida. Perry, how you doing, my friend?
I'd be doing a lot better if these friggin' fine feathered friends would get away from me.
they're
They're at the height of mating season, and so the ducks are trying to run away from the drakes, and they're using me as their superhero.
Come to Dada.
Anyway.
All right.
At least they're not penguins.
All right, we got a bunch of news that we need to get through here.
Yeah, we do.
We're going to start out with Florida. Both races have been called. Patronus, I guess, is the first. What district are you, Perry?
I'm District 6.
Oh, okay.
Patronus is District 1.
Patronus is a
district. The way it works is, the districts work left to right in the state of Florida. So the first district is Pensacola, that part of the state, and that's Patronus. And as you come across the state based, like every other state, based on population centers, you go from 1 all the way down to 29. So we are number 6, and there are 5 districts between Patronus and my district.
Right. So I guess Fine won in your district. His race was called first, a blowout. His race apparently won by 14 points. Patronus at 15 points. So the Dems dreaming of some sort of rebuke against Trump isn't going to happen today.
Well, not only are you spot on with that analysis, it goes even deeper than that. And the reason why I say this is, of course, I'm only going based on media reports and what the GOP has been telling me in order to extract money from my wallet. They spent in my district alone, talking Democrats, over $10 million. So when you add that to the roughly same amount of money they spent in District 1 out with Patronus or against Patronus, and keep in mind, they are a party that is currently in debt. They just threw away somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million trying to steal not 1, but 2 blood red districts in a blood red state. Now, as a businessman, I would say that's not a very good investment strategy. As a politically astute citizens, my attitude is, I hope this is just the beginning of more beautiful things to come.
I think so, I think it is beautiful. I didn't think they would have a chance. You can't just wipe away what happened in November, over 4 months of grandstanding and performative politics, including Cory Booker today, who has the record now of the longest Senate speech. But he wasn't filibustering anything. He spoke for over 24 hours.
Yeah, all he wants to do is tie up the Senate so nothing gets done. And, that dog won't hunt any better for them than it did for Mitch McConnell and before him, Bob Dole in the 1990s, when they couldn't get their way at the bargaining table with whoever was president of the United States. When people like Cory Booker home to their constituents, whether they're statewide office or a congressional district, they're going to be people who are angry because nothing is getting done. The only argument they're going to be able to put up to those angry constituents is, well, we got to stop Trump. That's not going to wash, because even though Trump is not winning in Black and Hispanic, and I'm not saying all, because Lord knows he won Black and Hispanic districts here in Florida last year. But on the basis, on the average basis, let's just say Cory Booker says what I just said. We got to stop Trump. Even in districts where Trump didn't win, but he at least showed up, meaning he won 40 or maybe 43% of the vote in a midnight blue district. People there are going to say, stop fighting Trump, start fighting for us. So again, this goes back to the conversations you and I have had, Rudy, for 4 or 5 months now, going back to October, then election night, and now here we are on April Fool's Day, and boy, oh boy, the Democrats are still playing the fool because they refuse to relent.
Yeah.
They are going to stick to their program, which is anything, anyone but Trump. Defeat Trump at all costs.
Right.
Stop his agenda. And they've accomplished a lot, like you mentioned during your daily show today. One thing I agreed with you on with regard to the Democrats winning, they are winning, and these are temporary wins with their cloaked henchmen, better known as federal district judges, who, just like what they did to Burrow, just like what they did to Le Pen last, have done all over the Western world since 2020. They have used a dirty judiciary to get their way. Now, temporarily, it is slowing down the Trump agenda. You don't think that Trump and his cadre of merry men and women in the cabinet didn't know this was going to happen? They prepared for this. That's the reason why with every single judgment, every single stay that these judges have put in place, Trump turns around. I've said it both on mic and off mic. It's rock'em sock'em robot. Okay, you defended this one. Well, here's my uppercut. He is coming left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And they just don't know what to do. And tonight is a perfect example of that. They have not learned. They have not gotten their sea legs. So let them use their henchmen in the federal district courts. We're prepared for this. It will slow down certain parts of the Trump agenda. But these judges, too, are going to have to answer to the American people and say, yeah, I'm more concerned about the safety and well-being of members of PDA than I am of your 13-year-old schoolgirl daughter. And I'm more concerned about the welfare of MS-13 members than I am about the protection of your teenage son, who may think he's taking an Adderall pill and pass a test and ends up taking fentanyl and dies. Yeah, I'm more concerned about them than I am concerned about you.
Yeah.
Good, Judge. Then we're going to impeach you, because the Democrats are going to say no to this, but then they're going to have to answer come next November. Those Democrats who vote no to impeach judges like this piece of garbage, Boasberg, they're going to have to answer to the people back home and say, well, I'm sorry, but I agree that the judge has the right to do that. Well, not according to the Constitution, Senator. So if you think that, I'm pulling the lever for your competition. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's what will come in November.
Well, we'll see, because, there's a couple of things we're going to have to look at here, and they're already Republicans are putting a legislation into place to challenge these lower district judges, because it's really unconstitutional. The only person or the only body that should be determining whether the executive is doing something lawfully or unlawfully is the Supreme Court. And the lower district judges know that, and that's why they're only issuing stays and restraining orders, because
correct.
As far as that is concerned, they don't have the right to overrule the executive.
That's correct. We know that. They know that. John Roberts knows that. The problem I have with the Roberts court, and I said this to you privately, the man still hasn't found 15 years after he was given the Rehnquist seat to run the Supreme Court of the United States. He is a stereotypical moderate who doesn't want to rock the boat. It's not that he interprets law differently than, let's say, Clarence Thomas. It's not that he disagrees with Clarence Thomas. It's that he's more concerned about what the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost write about him in their style section.
Well,
we've had too many judges in the past like that.
Yeah, he's captured. So they have something on him, because the way he rules seems to be siding with the establishment all the time. Let's move on. We got a couple things to hit here, because we don't really have anything from Wisconsin yet. Let's move on to Dr. Peter Marks from the Health and Human Services Department was fired by RFK Jr. You know what? Before we even go into that, I need to ask you a question, and it's regarding the signal dust-up. So you know something about this signal dust-up. Apparently, this guy, Jameson Greer, was supposed to be on the call, and because he had the same initials as Jeffrey Goldberg, is that how the screw-up happened?
Well, that appears to be how this went about. One thing everyone needs to understand about members of any presidential administration, and specifically speaking about Mike Waltz, all those contacts in his phone, they didn't have a little powwow in the Roosevelt room of the White House, getting together like a bunch of teenagers trying to get with each other on, I don't know, WhatsApp. What's your handle? Okay, here's my handle. What's your handle? That's not how this works. The way it works is you are assigned secured phone. Let me rephrase it. A secured government And you have your aide or an aide within the executive branch that enters all these names and contact information into that phone. You're not the one putting these numbers and contacts into your phone. They're put in there for you. Once that's done, then obviously you're having a secure text conversation with other high-ranking officials of the administration. And obviously, instead of full name, there were only initials. So whether it was Walt that called up the wrong name because it was put in the phone for him, I'm sorry, wrong contact, wrong handle, whatever, or whether someone else did it for him prior to them beginning this text conversation, that's how Jeffrey managed to get on there. Now, once he got on there, he had an obligation, and this is something that needs to be looked into. You know you don't have a security clearance. You know you're in this secured conversation with the highest ranking members of the Trump administration discussing foreign and military policy. And you pretend to be someone other than whom you are so that you could write a story? You think your name is Daniel Ellsberg? Is that what you think, Jeffrey? My argument is, hopefully, there is conversation going on right now at the DOJ as to whether or not there's someone on charges of espionage.
Absolutely.
Because whether he was put in there accidentally, if there is a traitor inside the Trump administration, and let's face it, Rudy, we know there's a lot of left behind. Okay, whether it was done deliberately or accidentally, as I said to you and your audience last week, I don't care. Whether it was done maliciously or not, whoever is responsible for that needs to go. It ain't going to be Mike Waltz, as the press is pushing for. They want him fired. They want, because Pete said something that they didn't like, they want him fired. You know what? Here's my answer to you. Double barrel, middle finger. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
Jeffrey Goldberg is the one that should be brought up. If they were going to hound Julian Assange for years, Jeffrey Goldberg basically did the same thing. So he should be looked at or reprimanded or something. So let's move on to RFK Jr.
Well, just one more thing I want to say in comparison of the two cases. Remember, Assange was handed that information by a mole. Jeffrey was an active participant. There's a big difference.
Right.
Not that I'm trying to overtly defend Assange, but I will tell you, when this first broke many years ago, I hated Assange. I don't hate the man anymore. I actually look at him as a true, honest to goodness, desirous person of liberty. And he wants the government to answer for its actions when it does not inform the public of what it is doing, here come the air quotes, on their behalf. So there's a big difference between these two cases, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, too, is that Assange was making public illegal actions that were taken by the United States and the United States military. As much as Jeffrey Goldberg and the left seem to say that what Walsh and Hegseth and all were doing on Signal was illegal, it wasn't. So making known information, secure government information, making it public, and you're not revealing any crime, I think that's a disservice to the United States. So now let's go to HHS. And why don't you tell us who Dr. Peter Marks is? RFK Jr. fired the guy under much protest.
Well, Peter Marks, to use your title block, is a member of the Left Behind group. who, from the get-go, wanted to undermine Bobby so that Bobby did not become his boss. And why is that? Because to this very second, Peter Marks is the greatest defender of the COVID-19 vaccination program. And he is also one of the doctors in HHS that was pushing for all these other vaccinations to be given to young people starting as young as age 3 months. And he is a dangerous man. I would say, without knowing for sure, he is highly responsible for what was done to Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, not Dr. Colby. His name just ran out of my head.
Bhattacharya.
Another great doctor.
Bhattacharya.
Oh my God, yes. And there was another phenomenal, internationally admired, respected doctor he was born in India, but he was an American, who suddenly died from a heart attack during COVID. His name started with a B too, I forget. And again, these were all physicians with PhDs, many of which had PhDs in research, bioresearch, who in the months after COVID-19 vaccinations started to raise questions. You know, Malone said, yes, I developed the mRNA. This is not what it was meant for. And based on what I'm reading, I don't think anything good is going to come of it. Now, that's not verbatim, but that's pretty close to what Malone said. What happened to him? He was deplatformed. Bhattacharya, as I said, Dr. McCullough, whose hand I got to shake a couple of years ago. Okay, all these people found themselves without a platform, in many cases without a license to practice medicine because of the actions of people like Marx. This is who Marx is. And when he refused to accept the reality of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being his boss, he was told, resign or we fire you. Which is it going to be? So he took the gentlemanly way out and resigned. Smart man.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts that I believe that he's in the pocket of the pharmaceutical industry anyway, because he was the one that was pushing everybody else on the FDA to go ahead and give emergency authorization to what was clearly an experimental vaccine. Still there, Perry?
No, I heard you say what was clearly, and then you went dead.
Experimental vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know, and what did he and others within the FDA and not Health and Human Services, the NIH, what did all these members of the dark state say? There's nothing wrong with this. This is no longer experimental because we deem it perfectly safe, even though, what did we find out in the last 24 months, Rudy? We found out they didn't do any testing.
Yeah.
They didn't do any testing.
Yeah. And the preliminary findings that they did have, they had a lot of black box warnings describing what we're seeing now, troubles with the vaccine in terms of side effects, myocarditis,
right,
et cetera. So they knew about what was happening, but they still insisted that it was safe for the public. Not very safe, not very affected. All right, let's move on to Elise Stefanik. She withdrew her nomination, or Trump actually withdrew her for being nominated for the ambassador to the United Nations because he was worried about these 2 seats in Florida. There's no worry, obviously, there. And worried about what's happening in Wisconsin right now. So he told Stepanek, go back to New York and be a congressperson. We need you. What are your feelings about this withdrawal, this news that happened last week?
Well, I am saddened by it because if you watch Lee Stefanik over the past 4 years, I think she could have outdone Nikki Haley inside the halls of the UN assembly. But the reason that her name had to be withdrawn, I do not believe had anything to do with how fearful the GOP was with regard to the special elections here in Florida. And the reason why I say that now is the general public, even the news media, are never allowed to see the privately kept numbers that only party officials see on polls leading up to an election. Trump knew, well, we all knew, but Trump knew the night before the election, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of how badly was he going to bitch slap Kamala. Because of the type of polls the parties conduct that only they want to see. And they do it for strategic purposes, not for what many people think. They don't do it to keep us in the dark so that people will either A, become disenchanted because they feel defeated, or A, become lackadaisical because they think there's no way the opposition can defeat their candidate because they're up by 15 points. They do it because they want to look at the inside information between men and women, between blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, between the 18 to 29-year-olds versus the 49 to 60-year-olds. They want to look at all those demographics and know where they're strong and where they're weak. It's inside baseball for politics. So they knew what people like me and you did not know. And that is, Republicans had these two elections in Florida in the bag. Okay. So why would, therefore, knowing this, why would Trump pull Stefanik's nomination for UN ambassador? It has everything to do with the political structure inside the state of New York. Kathy Hochul, to this moment, still hasn't decided when they are going to set the special election for Stefanik's seat. And at this point, Trump is looking at it from the standpoint, okay, you just want to have one less Republican vote in the House because the numbers are close. So you know what? I'm going to take your baseball away from you, Kathy. Now you can go running home to mama because Stefanik stays in the House. Again, another double barrel, fuck you. They don't accomplish anything by denying Stefanik the opportunity to be ambassador within the UN right now. And I got news for you. Whoever Trump puts in that chair is going to run circles around all of the ne'er-do-wells that represent the 100 and whatever it is, 91 or 189 countries that make up the United Nations. It doesn't matter who it is. It's just that Stefanik is a known entity. We know how she would have been. And that's why everybody, including Trump, wanted her in there because he knows she's a Trump loyalist. He'll find someone else.
Yeah.
No worries. No worries.
I looked at the list today. It was like 120 different contenders for that. I thought she would have been great, but basically it's like a Linda McMahon position. It's like we're not participating. That would be her. That would be her role as ambassador to the UN. All right. Let's. And one more thing on that issue.
the other thing to look at is just to be able to stick his political finger in Hochul's eye. What happens? I need to count the months. I believe we're down to 19 months. What happens in 19 months? Oh, that's right. There's the off-year elections for Congress. So after we wipe the floor, hopefully, wipe the floor with the Democrats in 2 years because they still haven't gotten their proverbial poop together yet, we'll have more than enough seats in the U.S. House of Representatives that Trump can then go back and reappoint her to that seat. Or he can also appoint her anytime he wants in the future through a recessed appointment.
Right.
One way or another, he'll get his way, whether it is now with Elise Stefanik or if it's someone else right now, and Stefanik later, if he so desires, to put her in the United Nations. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I'm not really worried too much about it either, because the Democrats seem to be doubling down on their failure, their real failure to repudiate their agenda, which has been rejected by the majority of American citizens. They have to become more moderate. The millstone of the progressive left is going to drag down the party with them, which brings us to our next topic, which is the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli protesters on college campuses, including Ivy Leagues like Columbia, seem to be meeting a different fate these days. Can you tell me exactly what's the thinking? What are the colleges thinking now? They seem to be warming up to Trump's way of thinking.
Well, this is happening has more to do with dollar signs than it has to do with politics. There are very few things in our country, other than the government in general, that are more greedy than the presidents of major universities. And you have schools such as, in particular, Columbia, that's located up in the Bronx, who were just told by the Trump White House 2 weeks ago, yeah, that $400 million a year you get as a grant from us, that ain't happening. Well, that $400 million is more important to the directors of that university than their support of a Palestinian protester who is not just speaking out against Israeli policy in the Gaza Strip. He has written papers and he has given speeches in support of terrorist organizations not limited to Hamas and Hezbollah. That is considered support to the enemy. And as a green-carded, and I'm using air quotes, student, he's no longer a student, but that's how the media is portraying him, as a green-carded student in this country, you don't have the right to speak in support of terrorists who are, as far as we know, still holding an American citizen hostage in Gaza. Now, it's been assumed for quite some time that this gentleman has since passed. But the point I'm making is, you have him, you have this young woman who was guilty of much of the same. Look, I don't care if you're Palestinian. I don't care if you're Iranian. I don't care if you're Jordanian and you support the Palestinian cause. That's your right. But you don't have the right to speak out against this country when you're on our soil. And you don't have the right to support terrorists and organizations of terrorists that have sworn a blood oath to kill as many Americans as possible going all the way back to 1979. You don't have that right. American citizens have that right, but there are very few American citizens who would agree with such policy and speak out on behalf of such policy. So this is the reason why Columbia and Yale and Brown and Penn and, you know, go down the laundry list of all the ivory tower schools, okay? That is the reason why they're all capitulating, and they're telling the student groups who are not speaking on behalf of the Palestinian people, but speaking on behalf of terrorist organizations, shut up or go home. It's all about the Benjamins. Always has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought Ice Cube would appreciate that.
Yeah. It seems that the colleges are interested in the money, obviously, because they're changing their tune. And it looks like the protesters and their allies don't really have any ground to stand on because, as I often said, unfortunately, or fortunately in this case, non-citizens do not have as robust protections of free speech as citizens do because, as Marco Rubio often said, you are here at the pleasure of the United States government. If you do something that upsets the United States government or displeasure them, they're just going to take away your visa, and they have the right to do so. All right, and let's go over to Disney. Now, Snow White is having an abysmal time at the box office. And
oh, my son loved that.
And Disney seems to be sticking to their failing DEI policies. They're doubling down on it, and their queer theory, it's not doing much for their bottom line. And to be honest with you, a lot of families are passing on Disney these days.
That's correct. Because I live so close to Disney World, and because my wife and I have done business with Disney World in the past, within their restaurant entity, I have somewhat of an inside track to what has been going on before, but more importantly, ever since Roy Disney, who was the late nephew and the largest shareholder of Walt Disney's company, Disney Inc. And I saw 30 years ago when Roy, because I believe if he didn't live here locally within Central Florida, he seems to spend a lot of time here. But I remember him saying, and again, this is not verbatim, that I just no longer have influence. You know, he may be the largest shareholder of stock, but that doesn't mean anything when you may only own 5 to 8% of the company. And so he did not like what Eisner did. He didn't like what Iger did. He didn't like what the guy between them did. Because each successive CEO brought more and more correctness, political correctness, into the daily operation of the company. And this is not just in Florida. This is around the world. There's Euro Disney. There's, I think Disney has a park in Japan. There's one in China. There's one in, well, France is the Euro.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are 2 here in the United States. So we're talking, and they own a cruise line that's very successful now. They own ABC Capital Cities, which also includes ESPN. So they have a huge grip on American culture. And the left-wing fanatics that are now in control, and I'm not speaking of the CEO, I'm talking about the people that are under him, like Kathleen Kennedy, who runs their studios, and she's personally responsible for what has happened to the Star Wars trilogy. She is personally responsible for what has been done to Snow White and all the other animated classics since she came on board to run Disney Studios. And she is a fanatic. And so these are powered not over the last few years, not over the last decade, but Rudy, this has been going on since the 1990s, maybe early 90s. So I'm not surprised, but I am very pleased that they're not in financial trouble, which is the reason why they will continue to do this, just like the Democrats continue to do what they're doing politically. But that's okay, because there are so many independent film studios now who are filling the gap. And the media doesn't talk about those movies. Okay? So let them continue to drink their Kool-Aid. Let them continue to lose hundreds of millions of dollars of their investors' money until the investors say, you know what, this ain't working for me anymore. You're fired. Let them continue to do it. I'm okay with it. My son hasn't set foot in Disney, and he's 27 years old. We used to take him when he was a little boy to SeaWorld, because in those days it was owned by the Bush family, Anheuser-Busch. And it was very, very Americana. It was very pro-family, and they had a great summer camp program. My son, because he was homeschooled, went to that summer camp 3 summers in a row. They supported true family values. And so we supported them. And that's why 2 months from today, when the queer nation invades Disney World, there won't be very many families there. They can have their fun for the 30 days in June. Go ahead, sodomize each other. Good for you. I really don't care.
Pride Month.
What Disney is.
Yeah, Pride Month is coming up in June. Yep. And it's actually Gay Pride Month. It's not just Pride Month. It's Gay Pride Month. So let's keep it straight. They could even make it LGBTQ plus Pride Month. But let's be clear about what they're trying to be proud of, and that's Rudy, their sexual orientation.
Rudy, it is no longer what you just stated. Trust me, my brother.
It's worse
from outside, because not everybody lives during those 30 days when they come down for a week to do the Disney thing. All these thick, twisted freaks of nature, they literally invade that part of the Orlando area. It is not just gay and lesbian. It is the Rainbow Coalition of alternate lifestyles. They're all represented there. Trust me, brother, I've seen it. Because the really queer ones show up in downtown Orlando, the center of town where my favorite cigar club is, and talk to any local who goes to downtown Orlando for dinner or for clubbing or for the Performing Arts Center, which is world class. They will tell you, oh, in June? Nah, I waited out. It's only 30 days. Trust me, it is not what you think it is.
Well, I won't be down there anytime soon, especially for June, and I won't be going to Disney anytime soon either. So any parting topics you want to touch on before we close out?
Did we cover all the talking points I sent?
We did.
We
did.
Did we?
We went down the list. We went down. The only thing that we haven't really touched on is Wisconsin. And wait a minute,
you cut out. Oh, that's right.
We didn't touch on Wisconsin because I don't think we're going to have we're not going to have a winner tonight, I don't think, unless you can check.
You know what that means?
Cheating.
It means they're going to award the election to her tomorrow
Right.
or next week, whenever they manufacture the votes to overtake her opponent.
Right, because they don't have voter ID there. And we did talk about the Signal dust up and Jameson Greer, so I threw some extra in there. So nothing off the top of your head. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot been happening. There was, I would call it a fake dust up with Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump. They really weren't at odds. They were correct.
You know what? That was something else that, right, I wanted to get to tonight. So I'm glad you brought that up. It appears, and again, using your terminology, there are members of the intelligence community who were left behind who are trying to destroy Tulsi and have her fired. Why do I say that? It has come to light in the last several days that when she gave testimony, it's public. I didn't see it. I haven't gone to find it. I haven't had the time. But I did see the summation of her testimony. She said that the Iranians do not have a nuclear bomb program. Now that's news to about 330 million Americans, because all we have been told for the past 20 years is that they're only 6 months away.
2 weeks.
Netanyahu said they're only 2 weeks away. And you tie that right alongside what her boss said in the last week, and nobody can do it like Trump can do it, but he said, if you think we're going to let you have the nuclear bomb, in essence, we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age before you get a chance to use it. Those are not his words, those are mine. But he made a public statement about that in the past week. So there's a discrepancy, a public discrepancy, between what our National Director of Intelligence is saying and what the President of the United States is saying. And in any well-oiled presidential have that. So she didn't say this. She didn't say this off the cuff, not knowing. She's going on intelligence that was classified and provided directly for her eyes only. And then she, based on that information, made a public statement to Congress and then shared whatever intelligence she was given behind closed doors with those who had the security clearance, elected officials I'm speaking of, with security clearance to actually see the written reports. Now, you can't have that. So tell me, how can it be for the past 2+ decades, every single administration, Republican and Democrat alike, Obama said it, Bush 43 said it, Trump has said it, Biden has said it, they've all said it. So now all of a sudden you have the newest director of national intelligence telling the American people that every single POTUS since Bush 43 is a liar, including her boss.
Yeah. It's it is what you say it is. It is an effort to destroy Tulsi Gabbard, but it's a conflation of issues. First off, the American politicians, the war hawks, always wanted a reason to go after Iran and Iraq for that matter. So it's the same sort of reporting as the Iraqi yellow cake.
Wait a minute. I lost you after you said the war hawks have always wanted to go after both Iran and Iraq.
And Iraq, right. So this
didn't
is
hear anything else.
right. It's the current yellow cake scenario, which didn't exist.
Yep.
So
Yep.
this is what the facts are, and Tulsi's just reiterating the facts. Is
so let's take that for
technically.
Let's take that. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, because I think there's a reason for this. Go ahead.
Technically, they don't have a nuclear program. Technically, they are enriching uranium, and the only reason you'd enrich it to 60% is for a nuclear weapons program. There's no other reason for that. But for nuclear weapons, you need about 90%. So anything over 60 is obviously for nuclear weapons, but they don't have, and this is what she said. What Trump said was they will not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That's what he said. You still with me?
Right.
Right. And so he said, he said most recently he was talking about a deal with concerning the Houthis. And he said they have to come to a deal, an agreement. They have to come to the table or the bombing will start, not by us, I believe by Israel. And I think they're conflating all these different issues. But the issue is, are they enriching uranium? Yes. Do they have technically a nuclear program? No, as far as we know. So those are the two things. And what Tulsi Gabbard said, as far as they know, they haven't restarted since 2003.
Now, having said all that, and pretty much I agree with you almost word for word. Why is it we continue to be told not the opposite, but a different story? It goes back to the war-making industrial complex. All the defense contractors need a boogeyman to be able to build the next newest bomb or fighter jet like the F-47, which, I don't think you covered this part of the F-47. Do you know that the Chinese have already flown their J-36, which looks almost identical? So where did they get that technology? Why is it that we have to continue to feed the monster? That's really what all of this is about when you boil it all down. And Tulsi, I believe, was fed this information for the purposes of taking her out.
Right.
Because she is a wartime vet. She has lost comrades in war, and she doesn't want to see any more American blood spilt unnecessarily in theaters such as Ukraine, where the British and the French are getting ready. I think you reported this. They're getting ready to put, not under the Ukrainian flag, under their own flag, under the Union Jack of Great Britain and under the stripes of France.
Troops on the ground.
And they're going to put boots on the ground. They're not going to be doing it under NATO because America's not going to be with them. But as you said, and very accurately so, they want a third world war. And so Tulsi is somebody who's trying, like her boss, to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. But the way it was portrayed in the press was Trump and Tulsi have a disagreement. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that was kind of a made-up story. I think they're all on, and besides, Trump is her boss, so I think they're all on the same page. Any more, one more brief comment before we close out?
Well, the only other thing is for all your viewers to not only stay tuned to what you bring to life every day, but also when it comes to the Middle East, pay close attention to what's going on there, in specific Gaza, because what little news I'm getting, and I believe it's propaganda because I'm getting it from Israel, things are really heating up there. And I think Netanyahu has decided, with the backing of Trump, this is one last push so that we can finally rid the world of Hamas. And I think it's something to keep your eye on, because I don't think the Iranians, they're not in a position to stop it, but I don't think they're just going to simply walk away from their brethren.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and you look at the Houthis and what we're doing in countermeasures, beware, because an attack on an American vessel in the Red Sea.
Yeah, it could dust up very quickly. But Iran is not in a good spot, because it looks very likely that Russia is tied up in Ukraine and won't be able to offer any services, which leaves them out kind of on their own. And so that's why the West is putting on the pressure now, because what is Iran going to do? Hopefully nothing. Hopefully they'll come to the table. That's what we all wish for, and that they stop supporting external militant groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. But it all breaks down to religious sectarianism, especially in Yemen. We're going to close it out there, Perry. Thanks for joining me today.
I tend to agree with you.
Yep. Go ahead.
You're cutting out.
Go ahead.
Rudy. I lost the final comments you were making with regard to, I think you were saying a religious war.
Yeah, sectarianism in Yemen. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why my last comments for tonight have to do with people. You need to pay attention to what's happening there. I find it interesting that no one in the American press seems to be paying any attention to it. And it's something that we need to be aware of.
Yep. Stop war. All right.
That's right.
Thanks for joining me tonight, Perry. Episode 111 of Tuesdays with Perry. I'll see you next week, brother.
I'm looking forward to it. As always, Rudy, have a great evening. And tomorrow's another day. I will be listening.
All right. Good to hear it, man. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tuesdays with Perry. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Take care now, buddy.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There goes Tuesday. There goes Perry, my friend from Florida. We're talking about a lot of things today. We didn't really get to Wisconsin. There's not much to report there tonight. But in Florida, 2 blowout special election races. Mr. Fine and Mr. Petronas both won by 14 plus points. And then we talked about Dr. Marks, the shill for the pharmaceutical industry, was fired from HHS. Elise Stefanik will retreat to fight another day in the UN, and much more we talked about tonight. Join us next week for another edition of Tuesdays with Perry, or join me tomorrow morning, live, 10 a.m. on Rumble, Rudy's Revelation. Have a good night. Peace out.